It's my great pleasure to be here. This is my first visit to St. Petersburg. I have no excuse for this other than I've been slow to realize what a beautiful place it is. I'm very glad to be here. I also am pleased to be at the school. My wife, who is visiting with us today also, her stepfather has been associated with this school for many years, and he's been bothering me. As a matter of fact, has now become angry with me that I had not visited this school because he thinks so highly of it. So now finally, I will become back in his good graces, and so it's a double benefit for me. We are, as I mentioned, a global company, and we are on four big businesses, four different kinds of business, all related by some common technology. I'll talk about these very briefly. Engines, which the professor mentioned, this is our biggest business. About 50% of Cummins' business is selling engines. Okay, so now I'll start into the main point, which is about doing business globally. And I want to start with just a caveat, meaning a caution, that the story I'll tell you about Cummins' global growth, I don't think is a recipe for every company. I don't think it's a standard answer. I think it's the answer we're using. The other thing I would say is if you had my colleague here or other people from Cummins to present this, they might describe some different elements that were more important or less important to them. So like most history, I'm the writer of this, so I have my own view, my own bias, and it's in there. So this, just with that caveat, then I'll tell you what I think it is, okay? First, I think there are four major elements to how Cummins has been growing globally and the success we've had. Four major elements. The first is leadership, meaning that even back in the 1960s, when the company was relatively small, based in this small town, we had leadership who was thinking broadly. They were thinking big about big opportunities for Cummins, not just small opportunities. It wasn't only wondering how I can take my profit from 6% to 6.5. It was about how we can grow for many, many years to come. The attitude of the people in Cummins was that we are stewards. We are in charge of the business. It's not our money. It's not our company. It belongs to all the people who work here and all the shareholders who own it, and our job is to make it big and lasting for many, many years. It may sound a little bit corny maybe, but it's important as a leader to think of what your role is. And so they had this broad view, which means they were investing for the long run. So all the way back in the 1970s, when we're investing in China, in fact, it was not so attractive, maybe. The idea, when you looked at it, many people thought this is a waste of money. You invest, maybe the government will nationalize the assets. But if you're thinking long run, of course, maybe there's some possibility. And today, China is more than $3 billion in total sales for Cummins. At those times, it was files in the bathroom. So very, very different situation, very long run vision. And even today, our CEO, my boss, is spending time in Africa. He's now been there 5 times in the last 12 months, trying to see if Africa is a next place like China for Cummins. So a lot of future thinking in the leadership, some open attitudes. And also diversity. I'll talk more about diversity, but let me just say only this on the introduction, that diversity is something that you get if you go work internationally. You don't have to try. So when you work in all these countries, you get people who have different ideas. They come from different backgrounds, they have different attitudes, different perspectives, of course, different language. So your company is now very different. You don't all think the same way. And if you don't figure out how to make that good for you and not bad, your company will do poorly. So you have to figure out how to manage all these different ideas. Thinking global, this is, I think, an obvious point. You have to begin to think what it's like to be global. And then partnering, which is how do you take steps in all these countries to find people to help you? This is another big challenge. I'll go through each now, a little bit more detail. So leadership, what is the job of leadership? I first said to you that you have to have somebody with an open mind. I think maybe this makes sense to you. But the problem is you also have to set a vision for your company so that people understand what you're doing. Because if you're traveling all over the world doing all these things and nobody understands what you're doing and why you're doing it, they won't support you. And today there are 40,000 people in Cummins. So when I have a very good idea, and I have many very good ideas, at least in my own opinion, it doesn't actually move the company at all. right? When I have a good idea, nothing happens in the company. It just keeps going the same. It's only when I can convince other people that it's a good idea and begin to get them to change their behaviors, then things start to go. So the leader has to set out a vision. And compelling, does this make sense, this word compelling? This means it's motivating. The vision is exciting enough that people actually go do something. Right? This is important. And then you have to have the big vision now down to goals and priorities so people get what's the next step, and how it's measured. It sounds very easy to write, and many business people write about this. It turns out it's much harder to do. Harder to say these things very clearly so people can go with you. Establishing the right environment. This is the idea that if your place that you work is not open, you can't communicate openly, that you don't build trust with your employees, people can't move up in the company so they don't really enjoy the work. If you don't have these environments, you don't adapt fast enough as a company. You must have these elements in your company in order to have adaptation to new challenges. Otherwise, it's up to the leader to think of everything. And although I'm very brilliant, I'm not brilliant enough to think of everything, not in all these countries. So I need all the employees to help me. And if the environment's not open and they can't tell me things that are wrong, things that I've said that don't make sense, then I cannot react quickly enough. So this open environment is really important for our company. Strong leadership team. This means not only do I have to be good, but everyone who works for me has to be excellent. So I'm constantly trying to recruit and develop people who are better than me. So you must be confident, right? If you're willing to recruit people that might be smarter than you, have more potential than you, they have other ideas that you don't have, you have to be confident enough in your own position to do it. So this is important for a leader too, to have some modesty that they need other smart people working for them in order to be good. And my note along the bottom is that for Cummins, the one point I would add is as we go into new countries, our objective from the first day we get there is to replace any expatriates we have there with local people running the company. So we want to bring, of course, our knowledge, our own way of doing things to the country, but we really want people there to do them. So this takes some job to hire people, bring them into the company, train them in Cummins ways, but then have them run by local country. And the reason we do that is because we think to succeed in the environment, you need to understand the local custom, the language, the area. To recruit good people, you need to speak the local language. So that's the idea we have everywhere. It doesn't matter if it's Russia or China or Africa. We want to have people from the country running our business.
And we've got just one final thing to do. So there's a tradition in our school that each guest lecturer receives the symbol for our school, polar owl, at the end of the lecture. And actually, probably you don't know yet, there is a real polar owl which is supported by Alumni Association at St. Petersburg Zoo.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.